right, so let's get started. So today they brought on Josh Duggar's defense, okay? And their expert witness. Now, I want to remind you guys that this is someone who was flown in, and I don't know if you paid attention during pretrial. She got really annoyed that she couldn't have the computer herself. Yeah, that's right. She wanted the computer herself. She wanted to take evidence that belonged to the DOJ, and she wanted to bring that out of the DOJ. She wanted to take the evidence home and analyze it, okay? Let's crisscross applesauce and think about someone who doesn't work for the DOJ being like, can you just give me that computer? I'm so annoyed. I had to sign a contract to even look at the computer, and then I had to delete my hard drive. I can't believe it. She was mad. This was part of the pretrial motions that we all talked about. She was annoyed that she would have to travel there and not take the computer because she had to go there, right? She has a degree in psychology. This is correct. All right. Anyways. All of this was laughable. All right. She's going to go down there. She's going to take that home, you guys. She's going to take it home. She's going to, she had to sign a contract, you guys. She was so annoyed that she had to sign a contract that she wasn't going to take any of that stuff with her. She didn't really get to get into that HP the way that she wanted. And she also couldn't answer a lot of the basic questions. So, it kind of is. So here's what the testimony boils down to. Josh's attorneys want you guys to all ignore that stuff was actually on his computer. Yep. She wants you to ignore that there were files on his computer. They want you to ignore that the DOJ actually connected to his ISB. They want you to ignore that they were able to directly download files from Josh's computer. They want you to ignore that evidence was actually found on the computer. They want you to ignore the fact that if he was sitting at the computer and all the time-stamped images of him sitting there with text messages, with that photograph of him looking in the computer, with him literally asking the investigators the moment they got there, is this about somebody downloading CP? Someone who also had a history with using these products, these same products were found on his phone. But they want to say, oh, but we didn't find any bad stuff on the phone. We only found it on the work computer. All right. Based on, look at the router, look at the router. Okay. Let's be clear, you guys. There's nothing interesting about a router. Because you know why? Because we know that they connected to his ISP. We know that they downloaded directly from his ISP, and we know the content that they downloaded from his computer, we know was found on his computer. So they found the evidence, they found the fragments, they found even whole files and videos on his computer. So what she's saying about the router is nothing. It means nothing because he was live and they connected to him. And it was found on the computer that they have in their evidence. This is why they didn't need to check the router, because the router, I'm sorry, the IP. I'm sorry, I'm saying the ISP. It's been a long day. The IP address. Okay. Okay. Let's start. She wants you to ignore the fact that they're focused on the fact that some of these were streamed, except the problem here is the DOJ has factual proof and evidence that at least one of the videos was not streamed and that was watched hard drive as on his computer. So she'll have no explanation for how he watched this download, because if they were remote accessed in, why was he watching it on the computer, right? He would have streamed it, except there's actual evidence that they watched it on the computer. So there's that. Okay. They're also going to be obsessed about the route. Okay. So one of the things that I think she got really wrong is the cache issue. The cache, yeah. So she said this, and this is just flat out wrong. Just flat out wrong. She said that she found evidence of thumbnails of previews of movies and images of CSAM, and it was hard for a user to find and view thumbnails on a computer. You guys, she's so dumb. The thumbnails she found were those snapshot thumbnails that are in the cache file. And she wants the jury to think that, like, that's what was on his computer. No, that's not what was on his computer. That's the thumbnail of what was downloaded. So it's evidence that it was on the computer. Got it? She's literally just ignoring everything. Okay. So that was one thing I noticed right off the bat that she got wrong. Because I was like, no, the thumbnails were actually in a cache file, and they're actually a photograph that's auto-generated by the computer when something's downloaded, and then it's saved there so that it's a remnant of what was on the computer. But she wanted to say that because of that, there was no evidence that there was this stuff on the computer, and he probably didn't even watch it because it was only a thumbnail. Yeah, okay. She also said that there was evidence of 5 torrent files between 522 and 541. She testified to everything that we already knew, and that there wasn't evidence that the two CSAM files, the DD stuff, that he ever downloaded or viewed it. Except there is direct evidence that he did that, because they actually have evidence that he was downloading it between those times. And they have a thumbnail of him that it was on his computer. So they're trying to say that it wasn't there, even though they literally saw him looking at it when they were checked into his IP. And then they found the remnants in that cache file. But she's like, well, I don't think he ever downloaded it or even viewed it. So why is it on his why is it in the cache file? Yeah, she's not very smart to testify why it was there and what is in the cache. Exactly. So, okay. Anyways, they're really obsessed with the watching part. Anyways, she also testified that he downloaded a video and then he downloaded it. He downloaded something at 11:30, and then at 11:33 it was deleted and added to the computer's trash. The trash folder record had an artifact with the same name of the file, and the index showed it that was added to the trash at 11:33 a.m. She said it was deleted 29 seconds after it streamed. So we only watched 29 seconds of it. And your point? Who deleted it, Michelle? How did it get in the trash if it was remote accessed? Why was it in the trash, Michelle? Can you explain to me why it was in the trash? I'm going to use expert loosely. Who was deleting it? She's going to get destroyed tomorrow. Okay. She couldn't rule out remote access. Okay, not being able to ruling out something doesn't actually prove that it happened. You can't prove a negative, right? So just because she can't rule it out doesn't mean it happened. And she said she'd be able to get better clarity with a router, that there's forensic evidence that are connected on the Wi-Fi. You know what I think is really funny, you guys? Why is it that the DOJ expert, who's you guys, the director of the DOJ, not just some dude, the director, why is he saying that in any case he's ever been working on, and he's worked on thousands, that a router's never been relevant? Literally, a router's never been relevant. It has no forensic evidence on it. And we know that he was in on that IP because we were downloading from his computer, and then we found it on his computer. Okay. Yeah. Routers don't store evidence like that. You are correct. Okay. So anyways, she talked about the MacBook. And for some reason, she had to point out that it was last accessed on the 12th of 2019, November, and that it had a boot camp installed to create a dual boot camp program. So it had you can log into it like it's a partition, but that somehow Josh had never logged into boot camp. Irrelevant. Completely and utterly irrelevant. He wasn't going to use his MacBook to look at this because Miss Anna also used the MacBook. Yes, blaming the router is like blaming a straw. It was Biden's fault. A router wouldn't be enough because there are multiple devices connected to a router. The fact is it was found on his computer is more solid evidence. Exactly. So you want to talk about the router, but why was it on his computer? Can you tell me that, Michelle? Can you tell me? Why was it on his computer? Why did they find it in the cache, Michelle? Why was it there? Even if it was remote accessed. I got a question for you. Who allowed the remote access? Someone has to allow and give you access to remote access. So who is on the other side of the computer letting the person remote access? Who did that? Who did that, Michelle? Who pressed it? It's attack of the road. It's like blaming the doorway. Yeah, it is. It's like blaming the doorway. You hate that you share a name with her. Okay. She is just trying to make a living, but she's, I feel bad for her. She's probably getting paid for this. She got flown in. She's money very badly spent. Okay. Yes. Okay. Sorry. I'm just trying to point out to you how ridiculous. Pretty soon, the router's here. Do you think the thumb drive will show up next? I want the thumb drive to show up. Maybe Jim Bob's thumb drive. Maybe Bill Gothard's thumb drive could show up too. Sometimes they all just show up. The router showed up. Okay. Let's stick to Josh right now. Okay. So the router, right? The router. So I'm trying to over exaggerate how ridiculous this is because you have to ignore everything. You have to ignore the fact that they found the evidence on his computer. You have to ignore the fact that they actually found files, images, and videos on his computer. You have to ignore the fact that there's remnants of this on his computer. You have to ignore the fact that they successfully downloaded a video and images from Josh's IP address, and those same videos and images were found on his computer. You have to ignore all of that, right? And instead, you have to think about the boogeyman thumb drive that doesn't contain anything related to this and the router. I know all the secrets. Yeah, I'm telling you. I'm sure the router is not under Gothard's umbrella of authority, and he's akin to witchcraft. And I'm sure the router is harboring elements of bitterness, and he's also has his incontinence, or his countenance is very it's angry. He wasn't being joyful enough. Okay. I think you're worried about a lot of nothing. I was told by people that were there that the jury looked bored during this, that they looked super bored, that they weren't super moved by this, and that they were ready. And so tomorrow, they're going to get cross-examined. This is such good therapy for this ATI survivor. Well, I'm glad. The router did it. Maybe. Routers do not have a memory card. The domestic version is simply a switch that hooks the different peripheral devices to the internet. They are not a smart device. Correct. They're literally just hooked up, right? They don't have data inside the like they don't have like they're not a computer. Incontinence, I mean, right? Maybe she needs to go poop. Who knows? Yes, people do understand routers because the Department of Justice expert literally debunked this before she even went on onto the stand. People do understand routers. And in a world like this, can their incompetent witness be used? The elf on the shelf did it. She can talk about her college psychology classes for sure. Okay. Then she said that he did use the torrent program to download a Hollywood movie that Tor was downloaded to in 2017, and that there was no CSAM remnants. We already knew this, Michelle. She talked about his iPhone. There was no CSAM on his iPhone in the thousands of photos he had. And he had a version of Tor on his phone, which he looked at adult content. So if you're going home tonight and you're Anna, are you more mad that he's looking at adult Pete and he got caught? Okay. Anyways, we're moving on. Now they're going to talk about torrential downpour, because this is the obsessiveness motion that did not work. They tried to get this thrown out. It didn't work because they completely destroyed this. So she doesn't understand how torrential downpour works. She actually wrote a declaration as a part of the pretrial motions, and the government responded by literally sending like 300 pages of codes to prove that she didn't understand what she was talking about. She said that there was several attempts to connect and failures throughout the whole 14th, 15th, and 16th. But they failed to acknowledge one file was successfully downloaded. Okay. But the other ones weren't. No, they were all successfully downloaded. She also disagreed that someone could not physically boot up Linux because, she's done it before. And she uses Tor, you guys. She prefers it for the security. Does anyone else think Michelle might have something to hide? Michelle knows a lot about Tor, and she's booting up Linux partitions. Was Michelle the one that was remote accessing on do we need to call Michelle as the boogeyman? Please tell me how they proved that he was on the computer at the time, because no one else was there, Judith. There's a picture of the reflection of him in his hat. They've got photographs of him sitting at the desk, taking photographs of sticky notes while things are downloading that are sitting on the desk. He's wearing that same hat in a selfie later that day. And have you ignored the entirety of this case? You might just need to rewind. I don't know how she qualified as an expert, to be honest. She has her credentials. Okay. It was a joke. Is my humor getting lost on people tonight? First of all, partitions are not normal. I actually talked to a couple techies, and they told me that partitions in the world of this is like, they're pretty outdated. Someone who has a really technical background was telling me that like this kind of technology was super common maybe back in like the early 2000s, but today it's just not something that people generally use on computers. And so it's not really something specifically common at all. I don't think they will. So I feel like there's no reasonable doubt here. Most people that were listening said it was all smoke and mirrors. That none of it stood up because it had already been counter debunked by the Department of Justice expert. Not only that, but when she gets on the stand and she's cross-examined, she could ask about why did they find the route? So first of all, the router is completely BS when you have on the device the content. So you know it was connected, right? One of the videos was for sure not streamed, meaning he watched the video on his computer, which she had no answer for. And stating that she couldn't prove it didn't happen doesn't mean it happened. Oh, wait, there's the thumb drive. Josh's thumb drive just showed up. Thank you, thumb drive. No, the defense does not cross-examine. Tomorrow, William Clayman is going to be cross-examining her, who is the prosecutor. So here's the thing. When it comes to all of this, they're not talking about any of the things that are relevant. They're not discussing the fact that it was on his computer. They're not discussing that they successfully downloaded. They have no answer for that. None. She cannot answer for the fact that the feds obtained 2 files from Josh on his IP, and those same files were found on his computer. Technically speaking, he's the business owner. Technically speaking, he's the business owner. He owns the computer. Technically speaking, he's in possession as the business owner on the computer. He holds that liability as the business owner. So being able to prove that he was there is more just like the icing on the cake. Not to mention the fact that's a lot of work that someone would have to do to set him up. Why would someone want to set Josh up so bad and take all of those steps to remote access into somebody's work computer, to put things onto the computer, then to delete the things off of the computer? Can you please explain to me why, in any rational, like, if you believe that, you also probably believe that the boogeyman is real, that Santa Claus is real, that the earth is flat. Okay. So the cross-examination in this case will be brutal because they have experts, the director of the DOJ, that's already destroyed this. Okay. And they can do rebuttal witnesses after this is over. So say they decide that for some reason they think she put out something, legitimate. They can bring a rebuttal witness on to prove that she doesn't know what she's talking about. So they can actually bring back James Futrell if they want to say that she doesn't know what she's talking about. Yes, they can tell when someone remote accesses and there was no evidence. It doesn't matter if they remote access though, Lisa. He actually watched one of the videos on the computer. It wasn't downloaded. It wasn't streamed. So remote access wouldn't have been able to see it. Okay. Right. That's what I'm saying, Sean. That's what I'm saying. I saw that the AZ forensic expert testified that the timestamps were wrong as well. No, they're not. Do you know that on one of the timestamps it says 4:47 and the clock on the desk says 4:51? So 4 minutes? You mean to tell me that the clock on his desk that's in the photograph says 4:51 and the timestamp says 4:47? Is that wrong? No, that's not wrong. Okay. Correct. You need to have to remote access. So if someone's going to remote access, Josh would have had to give them permission. So here's what I'm saying. Even if someone remote accessed, Josh had to allow them to remote access. If the videos were playing on the computer, Josh would have seen them playing. So if Josh was getting remote accessed, why didn't Josh call the police when somebody tapped into his computer and started playing these videos? That seems dumb. Okay. And the remote access installed only works from Windows. It's completely different remote access tech for the Linux side, and it isn't set up on that end. Correct. They wouldn't have been able to remote access into the Linux, and the way it was set up on the computer, it wasn't possible. And that's what James Futrell stated. Okay. It does. It's the mental gymnastics for me. Okay. Mary says if it was remote, it was Josh. I mean, I'm not lying about that. Okay, so their whole How dare the monster put such disgusting things on me? People use me for school and work, but that's okay. But the thumb drive, by the way, didn't have anything interesting on it. Okay. Didn't have anything interesting. It had like 2 documents and a a PowerPoint. There was nothing relevant apparently on this thumb drive. Okay, this is so dumb. Yes, someone made a video and they read from the Ashley, which was literally all over the news. In the beginning of the trial, in the opening statements, I don't think it was a mistake. The opening statements, they did show, I think, some images, and that was the only time it happened. And they were viewable to everyone in the court. I don't think that was an actual mistake. I don't think they said it was a mistake. I know that after that, everything was only for the jury, and the gallery was turned off. So, but the very first time images were shown, yes, everyone saw them. That's what they are trying to do, is they're trying to confuse people. But did they did they forensically the surge protection? Oh, the thumb Jim Bob's thumb drive's now here. Wow, Jim Bob, there's the thumb drive and Jim Bob's thumb drive. All of you guys are here. Josh. And Josh's thumb drive. How do all of you... Oh my God. The only confused people are lacking without common sense. Yeah. So, okay, here's the thing. Tomorrow they have, I think, they'll do cross-examination, and then I think they are only doing like 3 or 4. I think it's only like 3 or 4 for the defense. And then after that, if anything comes across in the defense, like say there's something that comes up in some of the testimony and they actually have a witness, like the prosecution can do what's called a rebuttal witness. So if something gets testified to by one of the witnesses for defense and they can literally put someone on the stand that refutes that or debunks whatever it is that they're talking about, they can call someone as a rebuttal. So somebody can go back on the stand. It can be someone that was already testified, or it can be just a rebuttal witness. So some of these people that are listed on the witnesses could be rebuttal witnesses. So, and then after that, they'll go to closing statements and it's over. Closing arguments. Yep. It has, oh God, the pre-wedding checklist. Can you later address there was this document that was apparently found on Josh's laptop, but I don't believe it's actually relevant to this thing. They were talking about a document that was on his computer. But in regards to like, it was a document. It didn't contain anything on it. And it was something on his computer, on his laptop. Not relevant. It was like they were arguing about the thumb drive. And the prosecutor was trying to say, well, was it this document? Because Justin Gelfand said, well, whoever has the thumb drive, whoever has the thumb drive is the person that did this. So then they went to Josh's laptop and said, could it be this computer? Could it be this document, right? Well, then she is on the stand and she goes, no, it wasn't that document. But she provides like no proof. She just says, no, it's not. So where's the proof that it wasn't that document? She provided no proof that it wasn't that document. My dog is downstairs, I believe. So long story short, the thumb drive, the expert, I'm going to need a whole, yes. Okay. Arkansas law actually has nothing to do with a federal sentence. So that's not true. I feel like we get very confused. There's a lot of misinformation about all of this. This is a federal case. They had her list up front, but they don't want to make her testify and only will if they need to rebut Josh. Right. So I do think that if Josh were to testify that he didn't do those things, Jill could be a rebuttal to his testimony. She could also be a rebuttal to another witness that says it didn't happen. So say, like, I don't know, one of the brothers gets on and is like, that didn't happen. And then she can be like, yeah, it did. I have been pretty on target. I don't think it is. I think people are getting really, you think it's like more complicated than it is, and it's really not. It's really not. These cases by the government are never like they don't lose these cases because they have so much evidence, and it's really not that technical. Like they had him come on and explain what they found. Yeah. These cases the defenses that he is using are pretty like standard defenses that these people will use. Like there's only so many options that they can use for a defense. I don't think even anything that he said today, even I'm not a technical person, and even I don't think Josh will take the stand. I do not. I'm also going to, people are allowed to have fun and be silly. Here's the thing. This is a very high stress situation. So I'm not going to tell people that they can't have fun. I'm not the Debbie Downer police. There are children involved. There are. Right now, we are not talking about the children. Right now, we're talking about the just how dumb the defense is. These lawyers have a long track record. No, they don't. They actually don't. I looked through their track record, and they don't have a long track record. They've had reduced sentences, but no, they don't. I went through this lawyer's entire background. They don't have a ton with federal stuff. They have some state stuff, but state and federal are totally different. Okay. Okay, Bree. You've posted the same comment a million times. We're going to ask you to not spam the chat with this comment, although I appreciate the comment. Okay. His lawyer couldn't convince him to plead. Not sure. What my belief is what's happening here is that Josh's attorneys probably told him that he should accept a plea deal. My belief is that Josh's attorneys told him that there was such compelling evidence that he was going to have a hard time defending this. So what they had to do was his defenses changed so many times throughout the motions. And I believe what they have had to do is fabricate something and make something out of nothing. Because I don't think they believed they had a good shot at winning. So they had to do something because Josh wanted to take this to trial. I think they were probably one of the only attorneys that was willing to take it to trial. Some attorneys won't even, if their client won't accept a plea deal, won't take it to trial because they know that they're going to lose. And some attorneys don't care and they just want to get paid. I think in this specific case that they probably strongly recommended that he accept a plea deal. I think when he lost all of those motions and before the motions in Lime, I think they told him, you should accept a plea deal. I don't think that ever stopped being an option until they couldn't accept the plea anymore. I think that he likely knew going into this trial that it wasn't going to be an easy win, but I'm sure he was trying his best to help his client. But in this case, there's nothing. Reasonable doubt can't, even if you looked at the router and said, well, they didn't look at the router, then how do you explain what was found on the computer? How do you explain that they were on his IP and they downloaded directly from him and then they found it on his computer? How do you explain that? You can't. How do you explain that he has photographs of his desk, right? And he's at the computer when stuff is downloading. So you mean to tell me that Josh was sitting at his computer and he saw this happening and he didn't do anything to stop it? And if someone remote accessed it, who allowed it? Someone had to give him permission. And then what do you say about his past history? And then what do you say about the fact that he has some of these same applications on his phone and on his laptop? And then also, how do you explain that he has had conversations with friends about how you can install a Linux partition to get around Covenant Eyes? Even if one of the things she said was true, that doesn't mean you can explain any of that else away. And the reason why they haven't attacked any of that is because they can't. They can't attack the fact that they found it because they know they found it. Josh's attorneys tried to get this all thrown out. They tried to get the computer thrown out because they knew that it was downloaded. They even were arguing in their defense motions that they were obsessed with the Marissa file. Okay, so there was the 65 images. And I'm just going to if you guys have been with this case the whole time, you'll know what I'm talking about. They were arguing about the Marissa file, right? And they said that he didn't actually successfully download it, except they did successfully download it. And he says, oh, you only got 14 pieces of it or whatever, and you needed however many of it. And the defense expert in this case was Michelle. And she said because he was missing, I think, the front or the back, I can't remember which one it was, that he couldn't have had the full one. But she got it wrong. He only needed, she said, oh, you didn't have the front piece, so you can't get it. And the DOJ was like, you idiot, you need the back piece. And we had it, and we were able to successfully download it from them. So she didn't even know which piece you needed in order for it to fully download. And they were able to fully download, not to mention the fact that they had the file sitting there in their evidence to show his defense to see, here's what we got from you. Do you want to see what we got from you? And they refused to look at it. So how do you explain that they obtained content from him and then it was also found on his computer? That's why the rest of this stuff is irrelevant. What was going on on the router? Well, he was clearly on the IP because the same content that they had, right? Those Marissa files, the 65 images, and then that 3-minute video, they found all of that. So, and more. Some of the stuff they weren't even looking for. Like, imagine writing a document and saying, well, you only need the front piece. And they're like, no, you don't. You need the back piece. I mean, to download a torrent, there are leeches and seeders. Do you know if anyone else was caught by seeding off the torrent file that Josh was downloading? I don't know what you're talking about. They successfully downloaded it from Josh. I don't know anything beyond that. They showed them the files that they were able to successfully obtain from Josh, and then they found the same evidence on Josh's computer. No, Michelle will not be called in. The witness list has already been made. Michelle and Jim Bob are not on the witness list. Okay. Seeders are people who are uploading the files that you are downloading. Leechers are people that are downloading files without uploading it to share. This was on Josh's IP. So they downloaded it from Josh. It was Josh's file. So this was a file that they got from him. And he was downloading one of them at the same time, I think. I don't know. Either way, it's irrelevant because they found it. Okay. I'm sorry. I'm trying to be really patient. No, he will not be immediately sentenced. The FBI wasn't involved in this case. So Josh took a photograph at his computer. Josh took actually multiple photographs. And I don't know if they were like, maybe his photo. You know what's really weird is I've never accidentally taken a photograph in my entire life. And then today I accidentally took a photograph on my phone. And sometimes, you know, when you have your phones and you accidentally take a picture, like literally he was taking pictures somehow on his phone and they were found backed up on his laptop. So his phone had pictures. He sent text messages. That's how they have him. But again, I don't believe, no. I don't think Jill's going to be I think Jill would be a rebuttal, if anything. Okay. No, I don't have, okay. All right. So at the end of the day, I feel like it was a lot of smoke and mirrors. I don't see a lot of anything substantial here. I think there's far too much compelling evidence. I think it's easy to get here's the problem with this defense is they want you to think that the things that they're talking about matters. But in order to feel like those things matter, you guys need to ignore everything else. And the beauty with the jury is that if there's someone who isn't sure, and if there's a bunch of people that are sure or that do know, they can explain why they're sure. That's why they deliberate. So if someone gets hung up on something like the router and everyone else knows it's bullshit, right? They can explain that it's bullshit and why. Got it? No, they did not trace it by payment. Josh's, no. They actually found it because he was on the BitTorrent network and he was in the process of downloading a file that is got a hash value that is known as one of the worst, and they saw him downloading it. And that's what pinged them, because they saw the IP was downloading it. They were alerted. They knew that this specific file was being downloaded. They saw that it was coming out of this area in Northwest Arkansas. They made connections to this IP address. They also were able to get the file from that IP address. They contact the internet provider to find out who is the owner of the IP address. The IP address owner is who? Josh Duggar. I did say a bad word. Sometimes I do. I feel like some people might need to go back. Yeah, there's a lot here. There's a lot of content. Someone said, yeah, they have more than enough evidence to convict at this point. He wasn't using Tor when the stuff was downloaded. He was using BitTorrent. That's where they found him. So he was using a BitTorrent peer-to-peer network. He was not using Tor. And he was using Ubuntu or something like that. I don't even know. But he was on a BitTorrent network. It was a peer-to-peer file sharing network. That's how they found his IP address. They didn't even know about the Tor browser until Josh himself brought it up and admitted to being experienced with the peer-to-peer and the Tor browser. I don't think so. The chat's way different than the jury. The problem is that you guys are only hearing, none of us are sitting there in the jury. None of us are hearing the totality of everything, right? None of us are actually there listening. None of us are paying attention because we haven't been there. Some of you guys maybe have been there, but for the most part, we're only hearing bits and pieces. So at this, not to mention that when they go into deliberations, they had been given comprehensive outlines and documents, and they have evidence books for them to show them why it was Josh Duggar, which they can take back with them. So now that the testimony is over, they'll still have all that evidence that they can go through when they're in deliberations. So they hear the testimony, but then they can still go back. They have books now of all of this. They have all of the logs. They got like 16 pages of his searches and like 16 pages of codes and like all these different things that he was doing. They gave them books of evidence. I hope that makes sense. It can be tedious, yes. Yes, they already convinced the grand jury, correct. Tor is a browser and BitTorrent is a peer-to-peer network. They're just different, completely different. Okay. And then, you know, he also wants to know who was downloading it. You know, the hardest thing for me, you guys, and I'll be honest, And I just want to share this with you, is that this process for me has been challenging. And if I do get points where I feel like I'm irritated or I'm short of patience or whatever, is that this is a hard topic to talk about, right? And then you have to explain technical things that are not easy to explain. But then on top of that, while I'm doing all of this, I'm trying to also understand the ring of people that he was involved in, because that's how this exists. None of this stuff would circulate if there weren't rings of people like Josh that were sharing this information, sharing this content, uploading it with each other, all of that. And so when I started seeing what was on his computer based on what was in the based on what was in the court, so I start looking at the players, right? Of who made these videos, what happened to them, where's like, are the kids safe? Some of the kids are safe. The other kids, like I tried to find out on some of them. Unfortunately, like you're not going to know. He happened to download one that was very famous and notorious, I guess. And so I can say like, yes, the kids that were in this one were rescued, except one was not alive. But as I was trying to get my backstory on that specific video and that person, Peter Scully, I did a Google search. And I did the Google search. And then you know how sometimes when you do a Google search, you can go to the images? And I was specifically looking for an image of, I think, him being arrested or something like that. And I was also looking for the baby, because everyone was like, is the baby okay? So I wanted to know, first off, was there a video that had a baby? Because the DOJ said it was a 3 to 4 month old baby. And the one DD video, it's supposedly an 18-month-old girl. So I wasn't clear if there was a separate video or if that was the video he was talking about. So when I Googled that, as I'm looking to see, okay, was there a baby? And is that baby safe? I get into Facebook, right? Because there's an image somehow connected to Facebook. And the Philippine press, I'm not even lying, took still images of the video and censored portions of it. And even censored. It's on Facebook. And I can't unsee it now. I can't unsee it. I didn't even want to see it. It was fully censored, right? It's on Facebook. You can't see the person's face. You can't see the other person's face, but you can see that the baby is hanging upside down. And it's on Facebook. And you can see that the baby's feet are like strapped onto the board. And so I'm like, yes, I did know that you almost reopened it. So there is one of Daisy's face too, completely uncensored. And I'm like, why are these videos, like there's a photograph of Daisy, totally uncensored. There's one of her, like, and it's all on Facebook. And I'm like, who put these out there? You cannot unsee it. Exactly. I couldn't fall asleep last night because all I could see was that poor little girl. And in the United States, we would never show those. We would never even show, in the United States, we would never even think to take a still picture of something like that and like put it into our reporting. In the United States, there is like journalistic ethics, right? And so one of them is to follow UNICEF's rules when it comes to discussing child victims of SA or CSAM. And one of those things is to not identify them, period, in any way, shape, or form. To not post even blurred photographs up of that person, to not even blur out the image, to just literally not share the image. Because all I kept thinking is, even that blurred out vision photo where you can't even see anything, it's still out there. Thank you. It's still out there. And I'm like, Facebook gets mad at people for having an opinion on politics, but this is on there. And that still image, even though it's blurred out, was still a horrific moment for that child, right? So why would anyone need to see it? None of us need to see this. And I wasn't even looking for that photograph. I was just like looking for information about the story. Okay. Yes. He made a formal motion in the middle of trial for an acquittal based on lack of evidence. Oh my God. No, that's not uncommon. So post-trial motions like that are not uncommon. So basically what they can do is, okay, that tells me that he's a, the fact that he did that tells me that I think he's afraid that he's going to be convicted. Because that's typically a motion that's filed after conviction. So the fact that he would even request that before it goes to the jury, I don't think that's standard practice. I know that post-trial they can do those, but in the middle of it, I think that he, let me look at it. I'll see. No motions filed. I mean, they might have like said in there, it's common. I do think that he probably does think that it's going to be convictions, though. Okay. Yeah. I don't expect it. Okay. So anyways, I'm going to go. That's all I've got for today. I think everyone, we should just be really kind. And I did a reel today with a bunch of information on my Instagram from the DOJ about this kind of stuff. A lot of times people want to say that these are victimless crimes. They are not, because they didn't touch the child. And I just want to say that every single person that reviews one of those videos or photographs is re-victimizing the child. So every single time that photo is looked at or that video is looked at, so don't share it, don't post it, don't participate in it. Don't. It's horrible. It's a perpetual crime that's committed against a child over and over and over and over again. And then that child is always going to be worried about that image or that video being out there. So think about those kids and think about what they go through. Don't think about or feel sorry for Josh. And I'm going to... Sojo Files is on podcasts. She does recaps, and you should check that out. And if you guys, comments, questions, concerns, always check me out on Instagram, Without a Crystal Ball. Bye, guys.